Hello everyone, in this video presentation we are going to discuss module 1 of our online course on identification and quantification of impacts and mitigation measures in environment impact assessment. As you know, in these chapters we have started with what are the national environmental issues. The national environmental issues in India, they can be clubbed into two types. One which are linked with environmental degradation and other due to lack of governance. The issues that are linked with environmental degradation can be further considered with those linked with the poverty and those due to development. Whatever may be the reason for this environmental degradation, one of the first primary criteria for controlling this is having an effective regulation in place to curb the environmental degradation. Just giving you an overview of environmental laws. The environmental laws can be linked to Bombay Shore Act of 1853, and after that you can say that major environmental law or environmental activities, they came into focus in 1972 when India participated in Stockholm Conference. After that, the first law which came for environmental protection in India was Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1974. Then all of you must be aware of that in 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy struck India, and after that Indian environmental legislations moved at a very fast pace. In 1985 Ministry of Environment and Forest was constituted as an independent ministry, and in 1986 we have for the first time an umbrella legislation, Environmental Protection Act 1986, to curb various kind of environmental degradations in a comprehensive manner. Further to this, in 1994 under Environmental Protection Act, we have in place Environmental Impact Assessment Notification 1994. Now this notification covered 30 projects at that time for which EIA was necessary. What is EIA? The International Association for Impact Assessment, it defines environmental impact as the process of identifying, predicting, evaluating and mitigating the biophysical, social and other relevant effects of development proposals prior to major decisions being taken and commitments made. This is the definition which I has come up in 1999. Now basically EIA is an attempt to see from very beginning what can be the ill effects of development and to incorporate mitigation strategies within, so that we are able to ensure that the development happens in a sustainable manner. So what is EIA? EIA is a basically decision making process, and it is not a formula for preparing a document. And EIA attempts to answer the following questions. What will happen as a result of project? We are making a project, we are developing a new building or we are developing a new industry. What is going to happen to our environment on account of this development? What will be the extent of changes, and do these changes matter? Are they significant? Are they going to damage our environment? And what can be done about them? How can decision makers be informed of what needs to be done? So an EIA tries to incorporate all those issues into the project from the very beginning, so that we can come out with sound alternatives. Now, what is the purpose of EIA therefore? In a very simplified term, it can be said that it is to look before you leap. Now these answers are achieved through following steps. First of all, we identify the impacts, then we predict significance of causes and impact of impacts, then evaluation of predicted adverse impacts to determine whether they are significant enough to warrant mitigation, and suggesting a wide range of measures to prevent, reduce or remedy these adverse impacts which warrant mitigation, and documentation of the process and conclusions. So there is a small terminology used in international scenario that before introduction of an EIA, this can be said as DAD, means decide, announce and defend, and the role of citizens is critics, objectors and protesters, and as a result environmental conditions are steadily deteriorating. But once we start doing EIAs, then the government's role becomes that of discuss, decide and deliver, DDD, and the role of citizens becomes stakeholders, contributors and participants, and therefore environmental conditions slowly starts improving. So this is the importance which EIA has in our overall scenario. So friends, what was happening on environmental impact assessment in international scenario? In USA, EIA started as far as back in 1975. In India, as I told you, that EIA started in 1994 when environment impact assessment notification was put into practice. This covered only industrial projects at that time. Therefore, in 2004 there was an amendment in this notification where construction projects as well as industrial parks, they were also covered under the scope of EIA. As more and more construction activities started happening, it was thought prudent to include these two activities other than industrial activities also under the ambient of EIA. Now for construction projects, this notification which was amended in 2004, it said any construction project which employs more than 1000 people or which cost is greater than 50 crore or which generates more than 50,000 liter of sewage will be covered under EIA. For industrial parks, it was stated any park which is greater than 50 hectare in area will be covered for EIA. In between this, in 1997, a very important amendment has happened. This was the year when public consultation was made mandatory for the purpose of EIA. Now public consultation has a very important role in EIA because the development is happening for the public. If public is not convinced with the project, then it will not deliver the required results. So it is very important that the viewpoint of public are taken into consideration. But still people were not happy with whatever was happening for EIA in India under 1994 notification or amendments done in 2004. They wanted something more concrete. Now what is the problem in EIA in India? The major concern about EIA in India is that it is happening at project level, whereas for most of the developed countries they have shifted to strategic environment impact assessment, where EIA is happening at the policy level. Now in India you may approve 50 projects in an area, all will get environmental clearance, and as a result environmental improvement will not happen because the assimilative capacity may increase. We will discuss this further. But other major drawbacks of 1994 notification and amendment done in 2004 were that in 1994 notification entire EIA process was centralized. You have to get environmental clearance from the central government, and people from all over the country have to travel to Delhi to get their project proposals cleared for environmental purpose. Now this was a great hindrance for a country which is very wide and large called India. Therefore when the EIA notification 2006 was brought into picture, the process of giving EIA was split into two levels, one at the central level and one at the state level, and the project was categorized into two parts, category A and category B, whereas category A projects will get environmental clearance at the central level at Delhi. The category B projects will get environmental clearance at the state levels in the state capitals. Now this was a big relief from EIA process which was earlier implemented in 1994. Another issue in 1994 scenario was that you have to come for environmental clearance after getting your project approved at all levels. Therefore it would have become very difficult to reject a project in the end. But in 2006 you can come for your project for environmental clearance at conceptual level even without taking approvals from other departments. This was a big relief from the project proponent, as well as there was reduced pressure on authorities, as the project was only on a conceptual stage. If the project would have been rejected, there was no big hue and cry. Therefore, in 2006, when the new notification on EIA came in India, it was very much appreciated. Also, over these 10 years, infrastructure projects have increased in large number. So therefore, in 2006 notification, a large number of projects as airport, roadways, highway, all these projects were covered under EIA notification, in addition to construction and industrial projects. Therefore, the entire concept of EIA after 2006 changed. However, one of the problems still continues to exist, that is that EIA is granted on project level and not as a strategic environment assessment. So friends, you have some exercises in your modules. I will discuss briefly about these exercises. You know, one of the questions asked to you was about Bhuj city. We have given you dust levels and TDS content and temperature conditions at Bhuj city. And we have asked you, what do you understand from the statement given? You must have gone through the various terms and definitions which we have given you in the chapter 1. Actually, this question's answer is linked to those, and we have actually described the baseline environmental conditions here. So this kind of statements reflect baseline environmental conditions. Then we have given you another set of statement where we have discussed that in Pondicherry a lot of industries, malls and commercial complex, hospitals, they will come over a specific earmarked area, and we wanted you to tell what this newspaper tries to convey. Now, this was something which we wanted to highlight upon you, emphasize upon you that there is an project based EIA and there is a strategic environment assessment. Now in India, we will be doing in such a scenario EIA of all individual projects here, and in the end we may find that the environment has not improved because the individual impact from each project, or you can say the residual impact that gets added up, and it leads to lot of problems. Say for example traffic problem. But if we do strategic environment assessment in such a scenario, then we will see how much commercial projects or how much industry we can allow in this area. That is, what is the cumulative capacity of this area, how much environmental load this area can take, and accordingly we can decide upon how much industries or other commercial activities will be permitted, so that even if we have individual EIAs, the cumulative impact of these EIAs will not lead to environmental degradation. This is very important point to understand. There was another question whereby it has been asked to you that your customer Reliance Industry is setting up an educational institution in Paonta Sahib, and State Environment Impact Assessment Authority has asked you to obtain permission from Central Groundwater Authority for withdrawal of groundwater. So what will be your advice to your customer? So if you will go through Central Groundwater Authority rules and regulations, you will find that Central Groundwater Authority does not cover groundwater in the state of Himachal Pradesh. It has to be done from state regulatory authority. What we want to tell you is that besides the environmental impact assessment notification, as we have given you in the chapter, there are more than 20 to 25 other laws which relate to groundwater development or forest or wildlife conservation, or your other environmental related laws as Water Act, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, Hazardous Waste Management Rules, Biomedical Waste Management Rules. So sometimes you may have to refer to all these rules and acts or other notifications, because environmental impact assessment is something comprehensive in nature. So even you may have to refer to Land Reclamation Act or social acts, so as the socio-economic benefits and related issues can also be tackled, as tackling socio-economic issues is a very important aspect of environmental impact assessment these days. Now, further discussing your questions, we have asked you that Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change has desired that MS Bosch shall grow endemic species in green belt. Now, what do you understand by this condition put by Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change? Now, again, you have to refer to various terms and definitions which we have given to you in chapter 1 and enclosed annexures. An endemic species actually means the species which are local to the area. So this condition means that you have to grow those plant species which are local to the area, so that people are benefited by growing such species, and the local fauna, it also gets benefited from the growth of such plants. Now we will discuss how EIA process actually happens in India. As I told you that EIA as per 2006 notification is now divided into two categories, category A projects and category B projects. The category A projects will get environmental clearance from the central government, whereas the category B projects will get environmental clearance from State Environment Impact Assessment Authority. Now this is based on the threshold quantity. The threshold quantities are defined in the EIA notification itself. Now the entire process is divided into four parts. These are screening, scoping, public consultation and appraisal. Now first of all, screening. You will apply for environmental clearance with form 1, which is given in the notification, and with a pre-feasibility report. Now this screening step is only for category B projects. Now once you apply on form 1 and with pre-feasibility reports, on the basis of guidelines provided by Ministry of Environment and Forest, the State Environmental Expert Appraisal Committee, which is the first step for environmental clearance at state level, they will scrutinize the project and they can divide the project here into category B1 or category B2. The category B2 projects do not require an environmental impact assessment, but if they put your project into category B1, then you will move to next step, that is scoping. At the central level, you will directly go for the scoping step. There is no screening for category A projects. Now in scoping, actually terms of reference for doing the EIA study are given. You can design a set of terms of reference with reference to your project, and with those terms of reference you can make a presentation before the State Expert Appraisal Committee or Expert Appraisal Committee. Expert Appraisal Committee is at central government level, and you can tell what all kind of impacts, what will be the study area, what is the process, and what you will cover in the entire environment impact assessment study. On the basis of your presentation, the terms of reference are finalized by the respective authority and the terms of reference are given to you. Now depending upon the term of reference, your study may be for one season. It is normally not to be carried out in monsoon season, or for very big projects as for river valley projects, the terms of reference may say that study has to be carried out over 1 year, definitely without the monsoon season. Now once these terms of reference are given to you, then you move back and do study at ground level on the basis of these terms of reference. Now again, after doing your study, you will prepare a draft EIA report and you will submit this draft EIA report to the respective State Pollution Control Board. This is required if the project involves public consultation. Now public consultation has two steps. First is public hearing at the site where the project has to be put into place, and the other thing is that comments of the people are invited in writing. So both these comments during the public hearing as well as those invited in writing, they are then clubbed together and response of the project proponent is sought how it will address the various concerns of the local public. Now when this happens, then after taking these points from the public, the consultant of the project proponent, he again revises the EIA, and final EIA report is made, and the same is sent to State Expert Appraisal Committee or Expert Appraisal Committee, depending upon the jurisdiction. Now here, if public hearing is not required, then you have to directly move to the appraisal step. Appraisal is where final EIA report is studied in detailed evaluation. Now, which are the projects for which EIA public hearing is not required? Now, they are modernization of irrigation projects, all projects or activities located within industrial estates or parks approved by the government, expansion of roads and highways, maintenance, dredging, provided the dredged material shall be disposed within port limits, the building or construction projects or area development projects and townships, all category B2 projects and activities, and all project or activities concerning national defense and security or involving other strategic considerations as determined by the central government, they can be exempted from the public hearing. Another issue we must understand when dividing EIAs into category A and category B is general conditions. By general conditions, it is meant what is the distance of the project from like international boundary or state boundaries, or from critically polluted areas or wildlife sanctuaries. Now this distance may be specified as 5 km or 10 km, and depending upon how it is specified in EIA notification, if the project falls within this specified limit, then a category B project will be treated as a category A project. Now what will happen if State Environment Impact Assessment Authority is not there? In that case, that project will be dealt at the center level as a category B project only, but the Expert Appraisal Committee will look into grant of environmental clearance to the projects. Now once we are aware of basic steps of EIA, now what is the outcome of EIA? What are the cost and benefits of an EIA? Now generally when we are talking about cost of EIA, we mean what will be the cost of the consultant. Now the payment made to a consultant can vary from 1 lakh to 25 lakh. It may depend upon the nature of the project and the threshold quantity, volume and all other scenarios involved. But another cost which we ignore is the cost of time involved. The project proponents are more worried about EIA because of the time it involves. The EIA time may extend from 1 year to 3 years depending upon the complications and all other issues. So they want that EIA is granted at the earliest so that they can move further on the project, but the process due to various administrative reasons is sometimes so slow that project proponents are afraid of EIAs. So are EIAs delivering any benefits? We understand that sustainable development has to be a benefit from EIAs, but on the ground people are not happy with the outcome of EIAs. There is no studies as such that any benefits have happened out of EIAs. The people are worried to the extent that the government initiated a scheme for accreditation of EIA consultants. This scheme was started by Quality Council of India. NABET, National Accreditation Board for Education and Training, has started accredited consultants which will do EIA, and only these accredited consultants can do the EIA, others cannot do EIA. Let us see how much improvement in EIA happens because of this accreditation of EIA consultants. But consultants is just one of the people who are involved in EIA. The key stakeholders in EIA are project proponent itself, then the decision makers, that is the people who are there in SCAC, SCIA or Expert Appraisal Committee, and then one of the most important stakeholder is the public, local public. Now how in general we can talk about the EIA when we are not talking about a particular project? Here we have to understand that the project cycle remains the same. We have also to take into consideration project cycle, that is how the project is happening, how the entire production will happen, from where the raw material will be sourced, what will be the different steps and pollution control measures in the production process, and how various mitigation measures will come into picture so as to minimize the impact on the various environmental areas. Here the role of project proponent is very important. Project proponent should understand that if it goes for EIA in a good manner, it involves public, there will be more acceptability for its project, rather than avoiding or running away or finding short steps to doing EIA. We have to gradually make the project proponent aware of that what good EIA can do to its project. If its project is accepted by the public, if public is aware of what is going to happen, he will get environment clearance at an early stage. For this, it is very important that environmental consultants are engaged from the very beginning. Generally, project proponents has a habit of engaging environmental consultants after they have finalized or after they have done the screening, or after they have finalized the entire project process, have passed the land use. But if environmental consultant is involved from the very beginning, then it can be very helpful, and even the consultant can play important role in mitigating the environmental issues from the very beginning in the project cycle itself. That is by suggesting new technologies in the project cycle which can minimize the pollution or can eliminate the pollution. Therefore, the role of project proponent and the consultant engaged by project proponent becomes very important. At the same time, local public now, which is involved through public hearing, if it is engaged from the very beginning, they are apprised of the project and they are taken into confidence, and they are given various other roles and opportunities in the project, then they can also provide very good support for successful grant of environmental clearance. The public hearing process, however, is a tragedy, has been reduced to an mockery exercise, where it is a practice that project proponents they bring known people who will speak in the favor of the project, and the real concerns of the people, they are not addressed. Even if local public is present, the most of the issues which local public is concerned about is employment, and environmental issues take a back seat. Therefore, the critical environmental components, they never come into picture when public hearing is happening, and as such the environment overall suffers when a project gets environmental clearance. Now friends, I shared with you that it is good if environmental consultant is engaged in doing EIA from the very beginning by the project proponent. Now what does actually we mean by this? Now there are two important aspects of doing an EIA. One is doing site selection. Now it is a tragedy that in India, site selection, which was a very important part of the EIA process, is no longer a part and parcel of EIA. Although it is there in the forms and everywhere that a site selection shall be done, but actually the sites are zeroed down beforehand. Now this may be due to political reasons. The political parties may be wanting that some particular projects come in their area. It may not be suitable for that area, but due to political reasons, or due to various subsidies, or due to tax benefits, or some industries may be invited to some particular area. So site selection is automatically happening without what is required to be done under EIA. In EIA, actually we have to do a knockout for site selection. Knockout means that we select 4 or 5 sites for a project, then we see whether these sites are suitable for that project. For example, for raw material, now one site may be very close to the raw material, the other sites may be far away from the raw material, so therefore we may have to knock out the site which is far away. Similarly, we have to look into different aspects. Groundwater conditions. Now one area may be where leaching, which is prone to leaching, so we may have to reject it. Other area or other site may be very close to some heritage building, so we may have to reject it. So this is how knockout criteria moves on, and therefore in the end we select a site which is least sensitive from all the sides. This is how it should proceed. But as I told you, that due to political reasons or due to other various factors, as invitation given to the industries to set up in a particular area, the site selection process indirectly gets done away with. The other important issue where the consultant has a very critical role to play is the project process. Now there are a number of steps in a project process, that is how a product changes from raw material to end product. Now large number of technologies are available. For example, project proponent may be deciding on putting up a boiler or a furnace where he may be interested in using pet coke because it may be cheap. But if an environmental consultant is engaged, the consultant may advise the project proponent that for pet coke will produce a large amount of sulfur dioxide, and there are a lot of restrictions on the use of pet coke. So he may advise at the right time to not to choose such a step in the project process, which will reduce the chances of getting environmental clearance or make the entire process complicated. Then ultimately we shift to what is cost benefit analysis. Now this is something for which very little homework is available in India. Environmental economics is not a very good very popular subject in India, and very little information or database or secondary data is available on cost benefit analysis in India. Actually the project proponent, it can proceed with investments. We can simply understand it like this: if benefits of the development minus the cost of development minus the benefit of preserving the environment by not developing the area are greater than zero, then a project proponent can move ahead with the project. But it is very difficult to actually give a monetary value to each and every aspect of environmental impact assessment process, and it requires a lot of experience, homework and understanding of the cost of various natural resources if we want to proceed like this. Now there was a query from a student that he was not able to understand the knockout criteria for site selection by reading the material. I would like to explain it with an example. Now suppose you are doing EIA for a solid waste project, and this is the city. North direction, south direction, east direction, west direction. The wind blows from northwest direction. There is a small river here which flows in this direction. Now you have selected a site here. There is a temple here which is a heritage building. Your one site is here, your one site is here, and your one site is here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what we mean by knockout criteria is that if we choose this site, or even if this site is here, now what will be the disadvantage? Now because wind is blowing from this direction, any order from the solid waste disposal site, it will be carried further forward, either here or any other habitation which is further existing downside direction of this site. So we can say no, this is not suitable out of the various site. If we move to the site 2, now site 2 is near to a sensitive location, that is a heritage structure. Therefore we can also not move to this site. And now if we select a site here, then this site is very close to this river, and leachate from this site, there are chances that it may seep into this, and therefore the water gets polluted. So therefore we can say this site is also not suitable. So we may be selecting some site somewhere here where these kind of impacts are not in practice. So this is what is meant by knockout criteria. Now there was a query from a student that we are not talking about any specific industrial process in this course, we are talking in general terms. Now it is very correct, but we have to understand that no single person can be an expert in all kind of industrial processes. Therefore NABET also, while giving accreditation to EIA consultants, asks them to have process experts in different areas. Now there are so many chemical industries, there are thermal power plants, there are mining. Nobody can be expert in all the process, but what you have to understand from this course is what is the steps in the process which are leading to environmental degradation. So irrespective of the nature of the industry, if we see, the first thing can be use of water and related impacts. Now if water is used, what we have to understand is, can we reduce water consumption? If we cannot reduce it and wastewater is generated, then what is the best technology available to treat this wastewater? And if we are treating this wastewater, can we recycle it? Now this is independent of the nature of the industry. Similarly, if we are talking about air pollution, suppose we are using a boiler. Now then what is the fuel used in the boiler? If this fuel is rice husk, or this fuel is pet coke, or this fuel is HSD. Now what is the impact on the emissions from use of different type of fuels? How to control the emissions and the pollutants from the emissions with reference to different kind of fuels? Can we have a air pollution control system that is inbuilt, or we have to put something separate or extra, and what will be the cost involved? Are any noise generation processes? Now whether these noise generation processes will have any occupational health impacts, or they will have any impact on fauna in the area? How far we have to go for green belt? So all these processes are irrespective of the nature of the industry. Only the content may change, but the overall the concept will remain same. This course emphasizes on understanding the concept. Subsequent to that, depending upon your own expertise, you can pick up the local specific issue as a part of your consultant team. Let us now try to understand some basic concepts of impact, because overall the purpose of our course is impact identification and their mitigation. Now what do you understand by impact, or what is the correct terminology? Is it impact or it is effect? Impact is actually change from baseline situation, and effect is the consequence of impact. As an example, you want to build a highway through a agriculture land, and once you build this highway, this agriculture land will disappear. This is the impact. And what will be the consequences of disappearance of this agriculture land? That is what is called effect. But in India, we are more comfortable with the term impact, and we use the term impact in general while we are going for EIA. Now the first basic step therefore in determining impact is understanding or establishing the baseline situation. Now how you will establish your baseline situation? And if you have read in terms and conditions a term moving baseline, what do you understand by moving baseline? Now baseline situation is the existing environmental situation, and moving baseline is a no project situation. So we in India generally are not taking into consideration moving baseline, but moving baseline becomes very important where the projects takes number of years to get started. During this scenario, the environmental conditions, ancillary environmental conditions may also change, and therefore we have to consider a moving baseline. So how to go for baseline studies? Now baseline studies will involve two things. Number one is primary data, and number two is secondary data. Now what are the steps to be taken into consideration while going for baseline studies? There are two most important things. First is that we should not do a lot of expenditure on baseline studies. Baseline studies can be extended to any extent, and we should not try to prove that by spending a lot of money on doing the primary data collection we will do a good EIA. It is very important that a consultant can judiciously decide how to support its primary data from secondary data. For example, if we talk about India, in our country about 490 stations are being run by Central Pollution Control Board under National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Network. Now if we are doing EIA in an area where these stations are already established, now rather than collecting primary data by running our own air quality network, we can use some of the existing stations which are being run by Central Pollution Control Board or State Pollution Control Board. Now this will help us to reduce the cost or expenditure of baseline studies to a large extent. So these kind of issues we must take into consideration when we are doing environmental studies. Also, it will be very good if we are able to assess the environmental infrastructure of the area. Environmental infrastructure, I means what are the water available, are there any water treatment plants available, are any hazardous waste or solid waste disposal sites available nearby, are wastewater treatment plant already existing. Now if the area is poor in environmental infrastructure, then it is just not that we say that okay, we will treat wastewater or we will get water supply from ground and we will cover it by rainwater harvesting. It is very important that we plan to develop a good environmental infrastructure in the area. Now there is also a term concept of boundaries, or what will be the boundary of EIA. Normally we have a practice of choosing a 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer boundary, but this can vary depending upon the nature of the project, and selection of this boundary will also add to the cost. So we should be very careful when we are selecting the impact boundary. And we have also to take into consideration at the same time that we are not doing shortcuts in EIA studies or in baseline study collection data, so that our data does not provide meaningful results. Therefore, both excess as well as shortcuts are to be avoided in baseline studies. Now we have therefore given you a question about a project on Yamuna, and we have asked you to put some terms of reference in place. So actually we wanted you to take note of that. If you talk about Yamuna, Central Pollution Control Board has put a lot of water quality monitoring stations at Yamuna. So you can make use of this secondary data from the Central Pollution Control Board website, and you can also make use of water quality data from the Central Groundwater Board website and use this data instead of collecting samples all around and increasing the cost of baseline studies. Now these kind of questions are just put so that you can think about these kind of solutions when you are going for the baseline studies. Now a good terms of reference for a EIA study may include scenarios about baseline, about application case, which includes the baseline case plus the project, and planned development case. Planned development case means you have to take into consideration cumulative effects. Your own project is coming, but at the same time some other projects may also be in pipeline or may have been approved, and when all these projects they come together, so what is the cumulative impact? Again, here the question of strategic environment impact assessment comes into picture. Another very important terminology in use during the baseline studies is assimilative capacity. Now there is a water body in the area. Now different projects may discharge their wastewater into this water body, but what is the assimilative capacity of this water body? Now it may be fit to take wastewater from one project, but if 10 similar projects come into area, will that water body be able to carry out the load? So this is very important, and again therefore strategic environment impact assessment or considering cumulative impacts becomes very important. The period of baseline study, as I told you, in most of the cases is generally 3 months, and we generally do not cover or do baseline study during monsoon season. Other than monsoon season, any of the 3 seasons can be chosen to do the baseline study, unless terms of reference specifically say that this baseline study is to be carried out for more than one season. It will depend upon nature of project. As for river valley projects, baseline studies over a year may also be required, and both primary and secondary data is to be taken into consideration. Now what is the typology of environmental impacts? This includes the terms like nature. Now impacts can be positive, negative, direct, indirect or cumulative. We have to talk about their magnitude, like severe, moderate or low, their extent or location, area, volume, cover, distribution, the timing during construction, operational phase, decommissioning, what is the duration, short term or long term impacts, are the impacts reversible or they are irreversible, what is the likelihood, probability, uncertainty or confidence in the prediction, and what is the significance at local, regional and global. So impacts can have a lot of different terminologies in place as above, which we will discuss in the module 2. But what another important aspect we have to understand is an alternative approach, that is impact related to receptors and reach. That is, who is receiving the impact, humans, or it is the fauna around, or it is the bunch of forest around. Receptor, we can also link impacts with reference to the receptors, and accordingly what is the impact on the receptors. It is major, moderate, minor or negligible. We can rank the impacts and we can identify their significance and plan the mitigation measures. Thank you very much.